Hi, I'm Mariah Mizbani, a student representative on the Board of Education and a student here at Niskayuna High School. Today I'm here with Mr. Will Rhodes, a veteran and also a graduate of Niskayuna from the class of 2000, who was involved in many sports here at the high school, and we're very happy to have him back.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So I'm going to ask a few questions about your experience serving. What factors led your decision to join the military?
Well, I always wanted to join the military, especially when I was a little bit older, probably my sophomore, junior year of high school. But what really made the decision for me was when I was a senior and I hadn't gotten as many offers to run track and go to college as I was expecting. And then when I finally got an offer from UAlbany, I started to think about maybe I need to toughen up and have a little bit better work ethic to be at the next level. And there's no better place to do that than learn how to do it in the military.
Yeah. What areas did you serve?
I served, initially when I joined the National Guard, I started in the infantry. And I did that for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then for the last 7, I've been a helicopter mechanic with UH-60 Blackhawks. And I'm currently a technical inspector. So my job really is to check that other mechanics have done their work properly and make safety decisions.
What was the transition experience like from going from one role to another?
Well, the transition, it's a more relaxed environment, going from a combat job to a support job. But it's a lot of classroom work, it's a lot of book work, a lot of reading, a lot of writing, very intense on the academic side of things.
So you were in combat?
Yes.
And did serve during wartime?
Yes, I did serve during Operation Iraqi Freedom from February 2004 to November 2004.
What was one of the biggest impacts that your time in the military has had on your life today?
One of the biggest things has been preparedness and just thought process. The military teaches you a lot about, you have a situation, analyze things, make a plan, complete the plan, follow through, and then go back and look at how did you do. My wife often finds when she says we need to do something, I start going, okay, well, here's a pro, here's a con, why don't we try to do this and see what happens? And she's like, you are so much a sergeant in this guy. You just make these decisions. So that would be what my one thing I would say that.
It's a very logical approach to
Yes.
everything. Can you describe the relationships that you formed with the other people that were serving?
I've had multitude of different relationships. When I joined the National Guard and I was assigned to a unit, there was another soldier who I had faced the 2 years that I played basketball at Niskayuna. I had faced multiple times. Now here we went from being opponents to being teammates and actually being in the same platoon in the same squad. And that relationship still stands to this day. We're real close. Actually, we live like 4 or 5 blocks from each other. Some of the other ones I've had were, mentors. My first platoon sergeant that I had mentored me into my professional career now as a paid firefighter. So when I've not understood things there, I've been able to pick up the phone and call him now that he's retired and he can explain things to me. And I've been able to pass on the torch at this point now that I have 17 years of service and start to mentor younger soldiers on where you should go if you decide to walk away from the military, or what you can do in your professional life, and sometimes just how to handle the everyday situations.
Right, right. Do you think that students today understand the sacrifices that it takes to enjoy the protection of freedom?
This is a complicated question. I think due to social media, it's very difficult to ascertain where everybody stands sometimes. It's good that you're able to hear people's opinions, but I would say some people do, some people don't, and that's perfectly okay. My understanding when I was at the younger age, I didn't really understand it until I served myself, and the first time that you go without something as simple as your phone or your Xbox or being able to order pizza and have it delivered in 30 minutes or less, then you start to understand what you're fighting for, to be able to live, to enjoy, and also you want to share that with other people.
Right.
So I think some people do and some people don't.
What is your greatest fear with the state of the world today?
My biggest fear right now is that we stop making an effort to understand each other. The first thing we need to do is, in my opinion, is to sit back and understand each other and listen. You know, it's not just everybody speaking and nobody listening. We need to listen to each other and have some sort of a tolerance. And my biggest fear is that we stop trying to help each other. That, you know, we have to share this planet. It's one world that we have. So I'm afraid of us all backing into our corners and going our separate ways, which would lead to a lot of horrible things.
Right. Did you have any experiences being wounded while you were serving?
I did, actually. On November 11th of 2004, I was injured by a mortar shell. At the time, those were random things that happened on the bases in Iraq, but they were meant to scare us. They occasionally would hit something of value, vehicles or structures. Rarely did they hit people, but every once in a while they would hit somewhere vital. They would get some soldiers, and that actual day on November 11th, which actually was Veterans Day, there were a couple of those attacks, and they did actually hit a couple of soldiers across the areas that we were trying to secure. I was injured in the shoulder and in the leg, and I received a concussion. But since then, I've made a full recovery. I'm able to run and jump and play basketball again and chase my kids around. So it's pretty good.
Awesome. That's great. Would you encourage young men and women today to join the military?
Absolutely. The reasons why, when I started college, I had 5 roommates that didn't know how to clean up after themselves. Didn't have a sense of pride in some of their things. I think that you learn in the military, you learn some things that you may not get at home. And on that note, when I joined the military, coming from Niskayuna, and the world not being like it is now, I didn't have a good understanding of how other people's lives are. I would say absolutely to be able to make contact with somebody who lives somewhere different from you, say Texas or Georgia or even California. That would be one of the reasons why I did. It's one of the best ways you can see the world without having to really go out and pay for it.
How would you encourage students today to celebrate Veterans Day?
I would tell them to do what I do when I'm not working. What I do is I go home, I get my favorite thing to eat, which would be, now at this point would be some spaghetti, and I watch all 10 hours of Band of Brothers. I watch all 10 hours of The Pacific, and then I pick some movies, random Black Hawk Down, Platoon, Saving Private Ryan. Get a chance to touch the past. That's something that we don't have. If there's other things, you can go to museums, go to memorials, pick up a book and read. Learn about yesterday. Yesterday is very important to where we're going tomorrow.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think I'll take that this Veterans Day. What advice do you have for the future political leaders of the U.S.?
Listen. Listen to every side. You cannot be, set in your ways and staunch on one side. We have to find that common ground, and we have to work together. We can't push things to the scale where it's biased one side or the other. We have to meet in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice that we all need for right now. I think things have been very divided. What impact has it had on your family life?
Military service, my family life, for the first, I'd say 10 years of service, it really wasn't really a big deal. I mean, my mother missed me, my father missed me. But in the last 7 years, it's been the most impactful having a wife and having 4 children. Like we had talked about, the last 5 weeks I spent in Puerto Rico, some of the hardest time to be with. I missed 5 weeks of them growing up. And I left, and one of my sons was just starting to crawl. I come back 5 weeks later, and he's standing up trying to walk. And even with social media and videos, those are the things you miss most, is that you miss some of the big things in life that other people get to be around and see right in front of them.
Do you think social media has helped veterans feel close to the people that
Absolutely.
they've been without?
It helps service members feel closer, and veterans, it can help push people not to forget our past. and in service. It's also helped the military find people who want to join and be connected at almost 24/7 to somebody who can help you start the process of joining the military, because it is a process. It's not something that you just walk in the recruiter's office one night or one day and say, hey, I'm doing it, and that's it. It's a process. It takes a couple of weeks and sometimes a couple of days or a couple of months. So I think social media has helped to shorten that process, get questions answered, and especially as a service member, keep me connected to my family in ways that weren't possible 13 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's really great. Thank you so much for coming in and
Well, thank you
talking
for
to us.
having me.
Thank
This
you
was
for
great.
all your service. We really
Thank you.
appreciate what you've done for the country, as well as we're a proud school to have someone like you as.
Thank you. It's so great to come back here and see all the changes.
Hi, I'm Mariah Mizbani, a student representative on the Board of Education and a student here at Niskayuna High School. I'm here today with Mr. Jim Wilson, who is a World War II veteran, and we're very happy to have you here, and thank you so much for your service.
Oh, thank you very much.
So the first question I have for you about your experiences was, what factors led to your decision to enter the military?
Well, the difference between entering the military service or going to college became very easy for me because of the fact that I had 3 brothers in the Army already ahead of me in World War II. Because, you know, World War II started in 1940, and 41 was the big disaster of Pearl Harbor. And so my indication was that as soon as I got through with high school, that I was going to go on to Michigan State. And unfortunately, the war came along. I graduated at 17 years out of Nanterre High School, and so I got the bug. I was always somebody that was involved in the sea. I always went to the library, got books on the ocean, things like that. And so instead of joining the Army, I joined the Navy. And so my experiences with that was precipitated by the fact that I had 3 brothers in the Army already. Very patriotic military family that I come from. My father was in World War I, and so it came off that it normally would be something that I'd have to do, so to speak. You know. Not that I was trying to do competition with my brothers, but it was just a patriotic thing at that time. Knowing what World War II was, we were on 2 fronts, in the Atlantic, Europe, and also in the Pacific and Japan, like that. So there was a big call up for a lot of people to join the military. 16 million people served during World War II.
Wow, yeah.
And that was a patriotic type of thing, yeah. So that was my desire, yeah.
Wow, so it stemmed from your family being so involved.
Right.
What areas did you serve?
Well, being in the Navy, you know, the old saying at the time in the 1930s, late 30s and so like that, was a poster was posted around different places, especially the recruiting stations. And what it said was, join the Navy and see the world. So that was an extra inducement, of course, to do that. And I did see the world because I served in both the Atlantic, which is the European theater of war, and I went into the Pacific theater, which was where Japan was, of course. That's where the war was after the European war, where Germany got over. So I had duty in both periods of war. It isn't natural that happens usually when you're end of a war in Europe, say, and you go on, you think you're going to go on a nice tour around the countries, you know, things like that. But there was such a big push to end the war in Japan that they assigned a lot of ships to head for Japan right away. So they gave me the service of being in both places during the war. Yeah.
Were there any differences between when you served the first time and when you went to Japan?
Yes, there is a lot of difference between the way that the land is laid out, where the war was being conducted. Basically, we were in the Mediterranean Ocean, which is the lower part down below Greece and France and things like that. Where in the Pacific, it was a a bunch of small islands made up the whole wharf there. Our job at the time was, when we got sent to Japan, was to get ready for the invasion of Japan, because they were trying to get stepped up everything so that we could end the war quicker with more forces, of course. You know?
Right.
So you're talking about getting ready in about 3,500 ships, getting ready for the invasion of Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think has been the largest impact on your life from your time in the military?
Well, what it did for me, actually, it showed me an awful lot of discipline for that in particular. I knew that any minute, or everybody's in the military service, you know, that's serving in an overseas position, has the fear that you're going to get killed, you're going to die, of course. You know, that's the first thing you think about in most cases, I'm sure. The biggest impact was there that my mother and father, there was 8 of us kids in the family, and they taught us a lot of discipline at the time. We were growing up in a very tough period of time, the Depression, very little food, very little clothes on our back. My father working for $16 a week and stretching that out, things like that. So the values that my parents taught us, all of us, was what I learned more than anything else. You know, so it prepared us for the military. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Did you sustain any injuries during your service?
No, I didn't sustain any. I was in enough where it could have happened, but I never did. No, no. Thankfully, 2 of my brothers were in the first part of the war in 1940-42. Both were decorated veterans, both Purple Heart and Silver Star for decoration for bravery. And
Oh, wow.
very, very good family-wise, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about some of the relationships that you formed with the other people you were serving with?
Oh yeah, well, I had great relationships. As a matter of fact, the ship that I was on for 4 years was commissioned in 1945. I was in the military in 1944, and after some other assignments, I got assigned to this new ship that was just being commissioned. And so I went aboard there, and I stayed on that ship for the whole 4 years that we were in existence. After the war had ended in 1945, what they did was they took a lot of these ships that were no longer useful, and they did what they call decommission them. They took them out of the Navy, so to speak, and then they would bring them back in. So all the people that were on that ship at the same time I was were all transferred to other places. I had the distinction of being the last person to leave that ship, because I had to close out all the ship's records.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of those names stuck with me. Today, after all these years, we still have a USS Little Rock Association, which is what the ship I was on. And so we have reunions every couple of years in Buffalo and in for other parts of the country. And the one we had, the ship actually is the last ship available, and it's up in Buffalo right now. It's parked up there as part of the Servicemen's Park.
Oh, wow.
So I see some of the fellows that I served with. Not as many, because they, of course, have passed away. A lot of them have. I'm lucky to still be going, you know, at my age.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. You know. So I do have a lot of communication with them, and Cheshire membership in that organization is limited to us only, but it gives a good chance to see some of them again.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
really great.
Yeah, it
That's
is,
a great
yeah.
way to stay connected to the
Yeah,
people
right.
that you served with.
Yeah.
Do you think that today's students understand the sacrifices that it takes to serve the country and protect freedom?
I think so in some respects, you know. The fact that belonging to veterans organizations like the American Legion, the VFW, the DAV, the Purple Hearts, the Iraq, Afghanistan organizations, we go out to schools, you know, different schools, elementary schools even, you know, junior high, and things like that, and we talk about military service and such. So they're very interesting, you know. I could just about tell you what the first question is going to be from the students when we go in to visit the schools. And they're going to ask you, the first question is, did you kill anybody? You know, it's just natural. It's automatically natural there like that. But they ask some very good questions. And so I think that, of course, growing up, Niskayuna High School has put an awful lot of the students into the military. And some of them serve with great distinction, you know,
Yeah.
especially in Vietnam, which was a very bad war. There's no question about that. But so I don't think we have a problem along that line.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, right. As far as I'm concerned, anyway.
Yeah. What is your greatest fear with the state of the world today?
Well, as we know, you know, it just happened a few days ago. Terrorism, you know, as such. Here's a young man, you know, he's got everything to live for, I would think, you know, and he decides to, you know, just take a ride in a truck and kill 8 people and maim other ones. So when these things pop up, it's the same with the Las Vegas massacre. It's the same thing there, because there was a man there that nobody knows why he did what he did, and 58 people, 59 people dead, and thousands, or not thousands, but hundreds of others wounded as such. So terrorism is a big thing, because you never know where it's going to hit and when it's going to hit. We've had some scares even in this area here of young people just deciding that they want to copycat somebody else and do some damage. You know. So that's a big fear I have, you know, like that. And I'm not too much concerned about global war as much as I am in these small little spurts of terrorism that go on in our country. They could become very, very big, though, you know, at the same time.
What do you think can be done? What do you think any of us can do, or anyone can do?
The best thing I could always suggest to anybody is to make sure that you keep in contact with the people that are running our country in the Congress of the United States. These are the people that decide for us what we're going to do or what we're not going to do. Writing letters to your congressman, writing letters to your senator, some people say, well, they don't read it. Well, they read it, you know. They don't read every single letter probably that comes in there, but if one happens to be a touchy subject that they're working on right now, they make sure, the people that work in their office make sure that the senator or the congressman gets that information, that particular thing. You know. So deciding what is right for the country is because of we communicate with our politicians and tell them that this is what we think they should be doing, and you'd be surprised, you know, that some of them listen, some of them don't listen, of course. I've dealt a lot with politicians in my career in Washington, D.C. and so forth. And so I think that that's the big thing, is just plain communication with the people that run our country and decide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really great advice. Staying involved is the
Yes.
best thing we can do to make change.
Yep.
Would you encourage young men and women to join the military today?
Oh, definitely, no question about it. I had 2 sons, you know, that respected me tremendously for my military service and such. I am like a lot of veterans in particular. You don't talk about your experiences in there because it's a different thing altogether, and you hold it back. But thankfully, my 2 sons were in the right age group where they never have to go in the military service, you know, as such. But you know, in foreign countries, kids at 12 and 14 years old know how to shoot guns. You know, so they teach them over there quick about you know, that defending their countries or just killing people as such. But I think that every student, everybody should do at least 90 days of training, just basic training, you know, the small stuff, not the real deep stuff as such. I think that that would help the students, people a lot, you know, more.
Yeah.
Yep.
How would you encourage students today to celebrate Veterans Day?
Well, that becomes a question of what are we doing otherwise. Today with the electronic age, you know, people are tuned to their iPads and all this kind of stuff, you know, and they do take that. Our big thing about Veterans Day in particular, remember, Veterans Day used to be called Armistice Day. That was after World War I. And that was not a time of sorrow. That was actually a time of joy because the war had ended.
Right.
And then it changed in 1954, I believe it was, to Veterans Day. And that was to celebrate all veterans of all wars, all periods of time. It wasn't just zeroed in on one particular group. So what we do in the areas all around here on Veterans Day, which is November 11th, which is a Saturday, it's a weekend for people. We just ask them to come to our services. We have services down at Veterans Park in Schenectady at 10:30 in the morning on Veterans Day itself. There'll be veteran services up in Rotterdam on Friday because a lot of the places are closed and such, and Saturday's a tough day for that. But I would suggest them to come and observe our services because it's not anything about a gory type of thing, a war type of thing. It's a celebration of remembering those that served, and that's the main thing. We've been doing it for years and years and years, and we keep doing it so that people will remember that there are veterans. See, without the veteran, there would be no country.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them gave their lives. Of course, over 1 million of Americans have died in that period of time. And also, I would encourage people to look at the military channels on television. There's a couple of military channels there, and they give a lot of history of World War II and Korea and Vietnam. And it's very interesting. Some may not be pleasant to look at, but it would give them a better background of what the sacrifices were made.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that is also great advice. I'm going to check those out, and I'm sure you can find the information online for the services
sure.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for coming in. We're very, very happy to have you.
Well, it's one of those special pleasures. Niskayuna High School has a tender spot in my heart because we hold services here every May for the last 25, 27 years. And to remember 3 graduates from the school that died in Vietnam. And there's another case of remembering because we didn't know those 3 gentlemen. Some of the members of our organization knew 1 or 2 of them from the school that graduated with, as a matter of fact. But we come here for that reason, to remember them. We don't ever want to forget those 3 people, in particular, plus all the others. But this is close to home.
Yeah.
Right.
Niskayuna is very, very happy to have you.
Yes.
And thank you for all that you've done.
Thank you. Pleasure.